Welcome to episode 101 of How About the Huskies. As always, I'm your host, Connor, joined by Matt and Andrew, and we have, at least rankings wise, this is the toughest opponent we're going to play so far this season. We're previewing this game against Gonzaga on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, a Hall of Fame series game between the number 8 Zags and now the number 18 UConn Huskies. Huskies had a bit of a jump after last week when they beat Baylor and Texas. This is a Gonzaga team you've seen a couple of times for the past few years, and we've had some pretty good success compared to most other teams against this program that's really dominated without a championship the past decade, I'd say almost. Huskies beat them in the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. They crushed them by 30 something. I don't have a score in front of me, but the game was over at halftime. And then last year out in Seattle, when we were red hot, we beat them pretty well as well. So before we really go into the analysis of this one, it's going to be a shorter episode probably. We're just doing the preview, but where's your head at going into this game? Because the Huskies, they had that rough stretch in Maui, but they're coming off of back-to-back really strong wins against tough programs.
I mean, that stretch in Maui doesn't really matter anymore. It's a new month. Maui was November, this is December, and this is a completely different team from what we saw in Maui. And we've got two great wins home against Baylor and on the road against Texas. Why not get this one too? This is a great Zags team. It's in front of basically our home fan base, so why not get this one too? Make these people eat their words, like the quote from Hurley about the people with the shovels that were ready to bury us after 6 games of the regular season. Make those people eat their words and go win this game.
Yeah, and that stretch in Maui, not really up to our standard, but I mean, our standard was unrealistically high. So, I mean, coming back, to the Continental 48 and getting those big back-to-back wins kind of puts us in a good spot. I'm looking forward to this game against the Zags. If we can pull out a win here, I mean, you can't really deny it anymore that we're basically a top 10 team in the country again. But I think it's a very important game. It's not a must-win game like the Baylor game, in my opinion, but I think it's just very important for the morale of the team and just kind of what to expect going forward.
Yeah, this game, it's not a must-win game, like you said, after they won that Baylor one, but this easily could have been a must-win game if we had a rough week this past week. Mentally, going after that Maui stretch, I was not sure what we would do in this stretch against Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga. Mentally, I was thinking, obviously, you want to win at least two out of the three to go over 500 in that stretch, but is that even going to happen, seeing how we just performed? But clearly, the Huskies, they beat Baylor. I mean, it was convincing. They were up a majority of the game. The Texas was even more convincing. I figured we beat Baylor at home. I honestly thought we'd lose to Texas on the road. This one was the true toss-up for me, Gonzaga. So seeing we're 2-0 already on this stretch, now we play the third game. I feel like there's got to be some confidence there. But this is a team, they're ranked eighth in the country. They've had a couple of tough, close losses. West Virginia and I believe, Battle for Atlantis down in the Bahamas. And they also lost a close one to Kentucky. So they played some tough teams. They played in a tough tournament down in Atlantis. So we'll just hop right into this preview. We'll talk about the Zags a little bit. They have one guy who we're quite familiar with, one because we played Gonzaga last year, but also from his time in the Big East, Ryan Nembhard, who is one of, if not the best true point guards in the country. He's averaging a double-double with points and assists, that is not something you see very often in the college game. He's averaging 10 and 10, which, I mean, he doesn't score that much, but he sets up his teammates. Hassan Diarra is going to really have to limit him, and Diarra did a very good job on Trey Johnson for the most part of Texas, so I'm not too worried there. But yeah, Nembhard's a guy I feel like we have to look out for.
It feels like Nemhards have been, running college basketball here for about a decade. Andrew was a very notable college basketball player as well. So I do assume that Haas will start this game. It wouldn't surprise me if he did at all, especially for his defense. You got to have him out there. And I don't really know where we go from there. Because if Haas gets into foul trouble or anything against Nemhard, then we're kind of in a bad spot. Mahaney, I'm not sure how well he would be able to cover him. And then you have the freshman Noel. So I think it's going to be a very important game here from Diarra.
Yeah, this is our second straight game, funny enough, playing against a former Creighton Blue Jay who is not currently on the Creighton Blue Jays, even though we do play them twice. But yeah, obviously Nemhar's given us problems over the years. I feel like he played all right last year, if I remember correctly. But yeah, what Matt just said with DR is going to have to be on his A game. And I think this is a game where if DR just doesn't have it, he's not going to play a lot because this isn't a game where like you can take chances and yeah, leave him out there. He'll adjust. It's like if you can't guard him, you got to come out. And I think that's what I don't think we're going to see Dan Hurley really hesitant to make any changes in this game.
Yeah, well, I feel like the Dunbar family, his brother Andrew as well, they take the same arc where they play 2 years at a solid basketball program, then transfer to Gonzaga and really just elevate their game to another level. Andrew, we saw in that Florida game a few years ago at Gamble where the Huskies upset the Gators. He was on Florida. That was his second year at Florida. Then he made it to the title game the next year with Gonzaga, had another strong year. Now he's a good player on the Pacers. And Ryan, 2 years at Creighton. They had some deep tournament runs. Now he's at Gonzaga. They didn't have as deep of a tournament run last year, but this year I feel like they're poised to do that. Aiden Mahaney, I'm glad you mentioned him, Matt. I was going to go there next. I'm actively pulling up these stats as we do this, so I might be rambling on a little bit here till I find it. He played for St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference, so he is very familiar with Gonzaga. He played against them one, two, three, four, five, 6 times in his career, and he has had some solid success. He has a couple of 20-point games. He had a 23-point game his last game, I believe, against them. So that experience, I mean, it may not matter too much because Gonzaga is a different team. Mahaney's on a different team, so obviously there's got to be something there, though. Mahaney with the experience, if he gets back into double figures, I feel like this could be this game. Especially, I feel like you can just go, man. I'm rambling.
Gonzaga is a team that is very cultured. They don't really like to change the way they run things much. So, I mean, if that's any indication for Mahaney, then who knows? We could possibly have a breakout game here. But the backcourt as a whole, I'm not entirely sure where a lot of the score is going to come from. So if Mahaney can come through and drop 20 points for us, I mean, it's a massive thing going forward.
Yeah, in that backcourt, you're getting doubles out of solo ball, but after that, DR is not out there for his scoring. He's out there for his defense, even his playmaking, like his 11 assists he had last game against Texas. But yeah, Mahaney, even if it's not double figures, if he hits a couple of threes in big spots like he did in that Baylor game, that could go a long way to deciding this one. I think this is going to be a close, gritty game, and we're going to need everything we can get out of those guards, especially looking at Nembar, but still on him. He plays 35 minutes a game. He's out there pretty much every valuable minute there is out there. So he's gonna be there. We need Diarra out there as often as possible. So moving on, we kind of hit the Nembard point on the head there. I want to talk a little about the Gonzaga front court because they have a very interesting makeup. They have three very talented players. I alluded to this, I believe, in the Baylor recap Texas preview episode where we played Sampson and Terrace Reed together in that Baylor game. I think we'll see a little bit of that in this one on Saturday because they have Graham Ike, who's their leading scorer, the Wyoming transfer. They have Braden Huff, who is a guy who comes off the bench and I feel like is like their solo ball off the bench. He gets double figures pretty much every game. And then Ben Gregg has been there forever. He's a guy who plays a bunch too. So how do you feel like looking at their front court compared to ours? I feel like they have three guys compared to our two, but I feel like talent wise, it's probably closer than you may think.
Yeah, I still think we need to run double big because if I feel like if we don't, it's a recipe to lose because the chances are that their bigs are going to be told to try and draw fouls because obviously the entire world knows that we foul all the time. So there's going to be that, and then just having to sub them in and out. If they're both on the floor, only one of them can get a foul at a time, and I feel like it's going to be easier defensively. So this might be a one where somebody like Jalen Stewart or Liam McNeely doesn't get as many minutes as we're used to because of the two headed center. But I think we definitely need to get that running again for this game, or it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and outside of the center position, they do have some length, does Gonzaga. Michael Ajayi, the Pepperdine transfer, he's 6'7". He came in from Pepperdine last year. He averaged 17 points and 9.9 rebounds, and that he's 6'7". He's not that big. He's a great rebounder. They have Khalif Battle as well, who's, I believe, his fourth school. He was at, Butler, Arkansas, Temple, Gonzaga. It might even be another one, and they might be at his fifth school. So they definitely have some experience. Who haven't I mentioned? Nolan Hickman's been there for a while. He's been a Gonzaga lifer, though. I remember we played him in the tournament a couple of years ago. And then they have Dusty Stromer, who's a young guard off the bench. So overall, they're a solid 8 deep. They don't go any deeper than that usually. They don't really have anyone that's played more than 6 minutes a game after those 8 guys. So it should be really interesting to see how we match up. Because looking at our bench last game, we didn't really use much of our bench. I'm going off the dome here. Mahaney played like 6 minutes. Stewart played like 7. Singare was second on the team with like 8 minutes off the bench. So yeah, we didn't play much bench against Texas. Will that be the same here? I don't know because you don't have the 5-day, 6-day layoff after this one like you did after the Texas game because we play Xavier on Wednesday after the game after Saturday. So we don't have that layoff. So I bet we'll see a little more bench, but I don't know. It should be really interesting to see how these two teams match up. I think we'll move on. We kind of did this early on in the podcast. We kind of got away from it. I want to do some matchups to watch, like head-to-head players. You guys got any you're looking out for here? I know I'm throwing you on the spot. We haven't done this in a while, but you guys got any like head-to-head position matchups you're looking out for?
I mean, you got to go with the obvious one, whole Samson, bless you, Matt, the whole Samson and EK thing, because I feel like that's going to be the main one to watch out for just because of the fouling. But we will run Terrace Reed, and he'll work fine with Samson. But I feel like the main matchup is to see what EK actually does against Samson, if he goes right at him or if he just obviously tries to get the foul calls. But it'll be interesting for sure. It'll be a battle down there.
And I'm looking, I feel like my obvious one has Nemhard in the backcourt there. And I'm just curious to see, Mahaney has all that experience against Gonzaga. I'm curious to see what he can do coming in. So I'm just rolling with the backcourt matchup, the point guard spot more specifically. Solo, we know is going to do his thing. So I'm just looking at Mahaney here and Haas going up against Nemhard and, seeing if that's a matchup that we can win. Because if we can, then I feel like that's an awesome sign.
And I'm gonna go a little weird too. I'm gonna go Caravan versus whoever he's guarding because those two bigs, Greg and Huff, they don't start. It's Ajayi starts at a kind of a small ball four. So Caravan's gonna have to go from guarding a guy smaller than him to a guy bigger than him. Because if we go double bigs, which I think we will at some point, it's not gonna be for the whole time that they're gonna have their double bigs, and that kind of be a little extreme. I feel like you'd be asking both Samson and Terrence Freed to probably play north of 30 minutes, which would never happen. I feel like so Caravan's gonna have to guard some players that are either smaller than him or taller than him. No one at the same size. So I'm curious to see how he does there. He looks solid defensively. He looks solid overall in that game against Texas, returning from his 2 game hiatus with his concussion. But yeah, Caravan, I feel like he's going to be the X factor in this one, as he is in every game for the Huskies. And that segues into this probably last segment here: players to watch for the Huskies.
I'm gonna roll with Samson Johnson. I know he wasn't in my matchup to watch. Andrew had him in his matchup, but just specific player wise, I want to see him stay out of foul trouble, and I want to see him play 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes if we need him to, because I feel like this is an important game for him going forward. This is our kind of last big matchup here before Big East play. So I really want to see him be able to be out there for the full time because we're going to need him in a tough physical Big East. That's for sure.
Well, Matt just took my matchup, guys, so I'm going to take his, and I'm going to go with Diarra because I feel like he's going to have to be the most important player for us in that game. I mean, he's obviously going to be guarding Nemhard, who we know can score. I don't think he really needs to. I think Hurley should just tell him that we don't even need him offensively. Just worry about defense. Watch Nemhard everywhere he is, and I feel like that'll be the key to success for us. Not have any one person try to do too much, and I think we'll be fine.
And for me, I'm gonna go a guy I don't think we mentioned at all yet on this show. That's Liam McNeely. Last game, his homecoming game at Texas, he only got 4 shot attempts. It wasn't like he was playing poorly. He had 7 points and 9 rebounds. Just the game flow wasn't really going in his direction. I'm curious to see how he bounces back. Not that he has to bounce back, like I just said, he didn't play poorly, but he led us to that win against Baylor. Then he was not too large of a factor scoring wise in the win against Texas. Kind of interested to see how he does. And I feel like he's a guy playing at MSG, the NBA arena, the world's most famous arena. He's a guy that his game's going to elevate. We have guys like that. Tristan Newton was like that Big East tournament last year, even in those St. John's games. So yeah, I feel like Liam McNeil is going to be my player to watch for this one. You guys got anything else about Gonzaga? Like I said earlier, it's going to be a shorter episode, but this is going to be perhaps the toughest game for the Huskies all non-conference season, and that's saying a lot, seeing they already have 3 losses. I feel like if they lose, it's weird to say that 7-4 is not the worst case scenario, looking back 2 weeks ago from today, but it's just not a position we're used to being in as Huskies fans in the non-conference. The past 2 years, we lost 1 game total, and it was at Kansas. So the Huskies usually dominate non-con. So 8-3 or 7-4 is going to be a little weird, but I'm not too concerned overall because this team's trending in the right direction.
And I'm sure that if you told any Huskies fans 2 weeks ago after Maui that they came away with 2 out of 3 of these quad one games, they'd be more than happy. So, I mean, if we manage to sweep these 3, I'd be very, very excited. And I'm sure everyone else would be too.
Yeah, definitely. That's the exact mindset I have. I expected at least 1 loss, and we haven't gotten it yet, so maybe we won't. But that's it for us. Next time you hear from us, probably be a Big East preview because, like I said, the Big East season, there's not too much of a layoff for the Huskies. Saturday and then Wednesday, opener versus Xavier. So we'll probably do something Big East preview-ish. Probably nothing too crazy like the past years, but something to really break down each team's. That'll come out early next week before the Xavier game. But yeah, until then, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned.